Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible. Yeah. You can make it full screen.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Otherwise, you can go on with this computer. Yeah. Now
Is it fine? Okay. I'll be switching off my video to conserve bandwidth. There's an issue. So, okay. Good evening, everyone. The topic I'm going to talk about today is the ethno-religious dynamics of Myanmar in relation to the Rohingya crisis. First off, a brief overview of Myanmar. Located in the Southeast Asian mainland, Myanmar is considered to be one of the most ethnographically complex countries in the world. The population is largely Buddhist, in addition to the followers of Islam, Christianity, and Hinduism. In fact, Buddhism as a religion is so entrenched in the country's roots that it ended up being a significant factor in mobilizing the Burmese under a singular identity in the nationalist movement against British colonialism. Subsequently, it gained independence in 1948. Speaking of ethnicities, Myanmar houses 135 races, which, albeit is a simplified demarcation, it explains the multitude of ethnic diversity in the country. These races are geographically divided into 7 states and 7 regions. The multiplicity of ethnicities withstanding, there were a lot of conflicts that arose in the states such as Rakhine, Shan, and Kachin owing to the representational and autonomy issues post the beginning of the totalitarian rule that followed the military coup in 1962. Coming to the Rakhine state and Rohingyas, previously known as the Arakan state, Rakhine is home to more than 1/3 of the total Muslim population of Myanmar. These Muslims are descendants of the numerous settlers and traders who'd been there as early as 8th century AD. First being the Arabs, followed by the Arakanese kingdom being a part of the Bengal Sultanate, then the Mughals, the Turks, and Bengalis, to name a few. In the pre-independence era, the British didn't, with the 1935 Act, which had the provision of divide and rule, as was the case with India, was also continued in Myanmar, and this seemed to give more preference to the minority Muslim population, and thus sparking dislike and envy among the Buddhist majority. In the 1978 was the year that marked the beginning of violence against the Rohingya. A registration drive named Operation Nagamin was launched by the military-led government in February 1978 to register citizens and expel immigrants. The Rohingya were forcibly evicted within 3 months, around 200,000 people had to flee Bangladesh. This was then followed by the Citizenship Law of 1982, which was passed, and it rendered the Rohingya stateless when they were not included in the official ethnic groups and were suddenly excluded from full citizenship and disenfranchised. In the following decades that came, numerous separatist movements sprouted up across the state of Rakhine, such as the Rohingya Solidarity Army and more recently the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, also known as ARSA. The ARSA claims to be an ethno-nationalist secular insurgent group fighting for the basic rights that include education, health, and citizenship. The 2016 riots broke out when 9 army personnel were allegedly killed by the ARSA. The military retaliated, which included mass murders, torture, and gang rape, and also around 80,000 people being displaced. The same happened again in 2017, yet another attack by ARSA, but this time the situation led to a pre-planned scorched earth military campaign by authorities in Myanmar against northern Rakhine. Coming to the exoduses, the first major exoduses to Bangladesh was in 1978, following the military campaign that was staged. 2017 brought in the next large exodus as Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. In September 2018, there were 1.1 million refugees in the country. As of April 2020, there are more than 30 camps, including Naipara and Kutupalong, which are the largest camps with the most number of refugees. A significantly smaller country than Myanmar in terms of size and with a larger population, years of influx has put Bangladesh, a developing country, at a strain to provide for the refugees. Lacking accessibility in basic services, the refugees are vulnerable to poverty, disease transmission, and natural disasters. So as a result, processes of relocation or repatriation have been in progress by the Bangladesh government together with the United Nations Human Rights Commission since late 2017. But since a significant number of refugees were hesitant to be repatriated voluntarily, as the situation back in Myanmar would be worse. They were ready to be relocated. And for the relocation, the floating island of Bhasan Char was made inhabitable according to the government authorities of Bangladesh in January 2020. However, the geographical location and the rather new existence of the island, that is hardly 20 years old, does raise doubts about its stability. A few other countries have also faced refugee influx. Saudi Arabia granted permits to 190,000 refugees in 2017. Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia are among the few others. They were hesitant to take in refugees, but following international intervention, they issued a joint statement allowing temporary asylum. As of April 2020, there are more than 100,000 refugees in Malaysia alone. Coming to the responses, with respect to Myanmar, according to the Myanmar government, the Rohingyas simply do not exist in their parlance, whether daily or political, as was claimed by Ambassador Phai Than Oo. To them, these refugees are Bengali Muslims who were never their citizens to begin with. Myanmar has repeatedly denied all such claims and states to the rest of the world that all these horrendous activities are solely clearance operations against insurgents groups such as ARSA. As for those who have been repatriated over the years, Myanmar, particularly during the junta rule in 1988, the same lands, cantonments were built, and quite often on the same lands that were taken away from them forcibly. These measures were also restrictive in nature, in the sense that there was hardly any freedom of movement or access to basic facilities such as education and healthcare, which is probably why there have been effluxes to other countries rather than voluntary repatriation. Responses among Myanmar's neighboring countries regarding the crisis have also not been uniform. Malaysia has been vocal about the crisis, and the Prime Minister has lashed out on the Myanmar government claiming Muslim genocide. And in the case of Thailand, on the contrary, it shows a racist outlook and the authorities blatantly refusing to accept asylum seekers. It is evident and that most of these countries find it really difficult to grant asylum in terms of resources and at times social acceptance. Moreover, in a recent turn of events, Malaysia used to take in refugees coming in from the overflooding camps in Bangladesh and instead were sent back. Talking about India and China, both have had different histories with Myanmar. As a country that lies wedged between the two, Myanmar has achieved centrality to the geopolitics in the region. India has banked on the similarity of the cultural heritage that both the countries share. While India did criticize Myanmar initially, more recently, the current Indian government is in support of the Myanmar government, and more specifically towards Aung San Suu Kyi for her silence. And India was also vocal about deporting the Rohingyas that had taken refuge in India in 2017. It had been reported that only 14,000 of the total number of people that had taken refuge in India were registered under the UN Refugee Agency. The rest could be sent back, and because India is not a signatory to the refugee conventions, it's not bound by any law. Talking about China, China has been Myanmar's most significant supplier of military aid and cooperation. This exists as a strategic relation despite their rough history with respect to border issues. Myanmar to China is the connecting link to the Bay of Bengal and the Indian Ocean, which opens opportunities and access to the otherwise landlocked Southwest China and the Indian Ocean territory. While China has refused to do anything with this issue earlier, they have now taken a new stance and volunteered to help resolve the crisis between Bangladesh and Myanmar through bilateral dialogue instead of internationalizing the issue. Coming to responses that are international, the shoddy depiction of Myanmar in the international scenario cost them in terms of international relations and trade. The West, Europe, and the United States has had stringent measures that involve very limited relations with Myanmar. Most of these sanctions placed on the military government were a part of the strained relations due to the outrages. Arms embargoes, cessation or restriction of trade preferences, and stalling all kinds of aids with exception to aids on humanitarian grounds. there are numerous other organizations that work towards helping the Rohingya situation. United Nations High Commission for Refugees and the United Nations Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs are two UN-led agencies that can be considered frontrunners. This led to the genesis of the Joint Response Plan that was launched in early 2019 in collaboration with the government of Bangladesh. It involved a request of 920.5 million US dollars as funding for assistance to the refugees, and the community as well has been working in northern Rakhine since 2017 and has established long-term assistance and has helped provide resilience and stability to the area with the help of Ministry of Social Welfare in Myanmar. Also, more recently, the Republic of Gambia submitted an application against Myanmar alleging genocide and destruction against the Rohingya at the International Court of Justice. The case was filed in November 2019, and by January 2020, the court unanimously ruled that Myanmar must take measures to protect the Rohingya, and in addition, conduct an investigation into the alleged atrocities. Concluding, I would like to say the crisis surrounding Rohingya was termed as a textbook definition of ethnic cleansing by the United Nations. The world's least wanted community, as well as the most persecuted ones, the Rohingyas have faced nothing but disasters and atrocities for decades. Their identity that has turned into a purely political construct through pre-colonial and colonial times and border formations has taken it onto trajectories that has rendered them almost fictitious. But the truth is, if even a state terms a group as an identity-less parasites, their existence still lives on by means of memories based on their lived realities. The refugees hence need to be guaranteed that they will get to live a dignified life with full access to education and health and justice, among others, as would a normal citizen live. Hence, it's absolutely necessary that the integration of Rohingya should be an exhaustive strategy that involves socio-political aspects and bridges the gap between the multiple communities. While there are enough things to create havoc and destruction in the world, the least humans can do is be more open to fellow humans, and in this case, inculcate a way to be more tolerant towards diversity and rebuild their country using their potential to the maximum.